When I was still deployed in the desert, I received the divorce papers via email. After 13 years of marriage, it all came to an end in a PDF attachment. My name is Nathan. I'm 42 and a staff sergeant in the 82nd Airborne. I had been in Kandahar for 4 months when Becky decided she was tired of waiting. Subject line read, "Let's be adults about this." The entire message was only 3 sentences long. She had already filed the divorce paperwork, drained our joint bank account, and moved her new boyfriend Jeremy into our house in Spokane. I read the email a second time, closed my laptop, took a shower in the communal stall, got ready for my shift, and didn't say a word to anyone. When I got back to my bunk that night, my entire reply was a single word: understood. That was it. No arguing, no pleading, no threats. Wilson, my bunkmate, could tell something was wrong. "You good, man?" he asked without looking up from his book. "Yeah," I replied, "just some stuff back home." He simply nodded, and that was the end of the conversation. Military guys know when to mind their own business. The truth is, I wasn't surprised. 6 months before my deployment, things had already started to change. It was small things at first. Becky stopped asking about my day. Started working late at the dental office where she was a receptionist. Started going to the gym 3 times a week, though she never seemed to actually work out. She had new clothes, new friends I'd never met, and new passwords on her phone. I didn't confront her, check her messages, or follow her around. That's just not who I am. But I also wasn't oblivious, so I quietly took my own steps. Not dramatic moves, just precautions. Secured important documents in a storage unit across town: my birth certificate, our marriage license, the house deed with only my name on it thanks to the VA loan, and all my military benefits paperwork. I also put my grandfather's watch and my mom's old silver in the same unit, things that were meaningful to me. I also opened a separate bank account and started depositing a portion of my paycheck there. Not enough for her to notice, but enough, so that I wouldn't have to start from scratch if things fell apart. The night before I deployed, she hugged me at the airport and said, "Stay safe, okay?" Her eyes were completely dry, as if she were saying goodbye to a coworker, not her husband who was leaving for a war zone. I should have known then, but a part of me still hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. What she didn't know was that I had been preparing for this moment. And what she didn't understand was that I don't start fights, but I do finish them. I met Becky at a friend's barbecue in 2010. I was home between tours, staying with my buddy Jason in Spokane. She was finishing nursing school but ended up working in administration at a dental practice, saying it was less stressful. We were married 8 months later. Becky always said she was proud of my service, but she never quite understood it. Her dad was a bank manager, her brother was a pharmacist, and there was no one in her family who was in the military. She often asked me when I was going to get a real job, not realizing that after 15 years, the Army wasn't just a temporary job, it was my career. We bought our house in 2014. It wasn't anything special, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, and a quiet neighborhood. My name was the only one on the mortgage since it was a VA loan, but I added her to the deed because that's what married people do. They share things. My dad died of a heart attack while shoveling snow a year after we got married. 3 years after that, my mom passed away from lung cancer, even though she'd never smoked a day in her life. They left me some money, not a huge amount, but enough for Becky and me to pay off our student loans and still have a nice cushion. I deployed 4 times during our marriage, twice to Iraq and twice to Afghanistan. Each time I came home, Becky seemed a little more distant and restless, as if she were an actor who had outgrown her role. I didn't sign up to be a military wife. She told me once, after I mentioned the possibility of re-enlisting for another 4 years, "I'm tired of being alone all the time." I understood. But the Army was the only place where I ever truly felt like I belonged. I was good at my job and people depended on me. In 2019, things started to change again with small details. Becky would get annoyed when I called during her girls' nights. She started talking about how her friend Melissa had divorced her husband and was now living her best life. She also started making comments about how we didn't have much in common anymore. I suggested counseling, but she insisted we were fine and were just going through a phase. Then came the late nights at work, the weekends away with friends I'd Never met, the new clothes, and the gym membership she barely used. I should have confronted her, but that's not how I deal with things. I never have. My dad taught me to think before I speak and to be sure before I act. No, I watched, and I prepared quietly because my gut was telling me something was about to happen. And in this life, you learn to trust your gut. 2 weeks after receiving the divorce email, I was in the mess hall when I got a notification on my phone from our bank app. Another withdrawal, $8,500, almost everything that was left. Put my fork down and opened the app. The joint account balance was down to $22.37. And the $47,000 we had saved up over the years was gone, completely transferred to an account I didn't know. Murphy, one of the guys from my unit, glanced over at me. Bad news? I locked my phone. Nah, just some account stuff. That night, I called our bank from the base phone center. It turned out Becky had been moving money for weeks, small amounts at first, then larger ones. The biggest transfers started the day after I deployed. I hung up and stood in the hallway for a long time, watching guys laughing, calling their kids, their wives, their parents. Normal life was happening all around me, while mine was being destroyed. That's when Wilson found me. Heard from Alvarez? That you looked like you'd seen a ghost at dinner, he said. What's up? I don't usually share personal stuff, but Wilson had helped me out of a tough spot in Kandahar, so I trusted him. My wife emptied our accounts and moved her boyfriend into our house, I said. She sent the divorce papers while I was on patrol. Last week, Wilson didn't offer the usual, I'm sorry, or that's rough, or you'll find someone better. He just asked, what's your plan? Not sure yet, I said. He nodded. Let me know if you need anything. I couldn't sleep that night. I got out my laptop and logged into our home security system. Something Becky had probably forgotten I could access remotely. The camera showed a strange truck in our driveway. A man I'd never seen before walking our dog, using my coffee mug, and wearing my Seahawk sweatshirt. And there was Becky, laughing in the kitchen I had renovated myself during my last leave. Something inside me shifted. It wasn't anger, but something colder and clearer. I closed the laptop and took out my phone. I made a list. Call James, my army buddy who became a lawyer. Check the VA loan terms. Contact the master sergeant about emergency leave. Review the home refinance documents that Becky had mentioned. Casually last year, check the security on my military pension accounts. I no longer felt sad. I didn't even feel angry. I felt focused, as if I were planning a mission. This wasn't about emotions anymore. This was about strategy. At 0500, before my shift started, I sent an email to James with the subject line, Need. Legal help. Discreet and urgent. His reply came an hour later. Call me. Secure line only. When I hung up from that call, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to threaten. I didn't even need to confront her. I just needed to wait, watch, and let her own actions become the trap. 2 months later, I was back in the United States. I didn't tell Becky I was coming home. I didn't call or text her. I just checked into a motel in downtown Spokane under a different name and contacted James. We met at a diner 10 miles outside of town. You look like hell, he said, sliding into the booth. I feel like it too, I replied. James handed me a folder. Everything we discussed, the house deed, loan documents, bank statements. And this, he said, pulling out a separate paper. I found something interesting when I was digging into your finances. It was a refinance application with what was supposed to be my signature on it, except it wasn't quite my signature. Someone had tried to copy it, but had missed some details. The middle initial was wrong, and the stroke pattern wasn't mine. Becky did this? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. James nodded. 3 months ago, used the equity to pull out $30,000. Your signature is required for that since the VA loan is in your name only. Forge my signature, take out a loan against our house, then clear out our accounts and divorce me, I said. Busy woman. It gets better, James said. She listed her boyfriend as a copplicant. He's got a record 2 DU is, and a fraud charge from 2019. I took a deep breath. What are my options? Several, James said. But first, You need to decide what you want. I thought about it. I want what's legally mine, and I want her to understand consequences. James smiled. Then here's what we do. The next day I drove past our house. Her boyfriend's truck was gone, but Becky's car was in the driveway. I parked down the street and watched for a while, considering knocking on the door and confronting her, but that wasn't the plan. Instead, I drove to the bank and met with a loan officer who had processed the refinance. I showed him my military ID, the real signature on my driver's license, and the forged documents. His face went pale. "I'll need to report this immediately," he said. "I understand," I replied. "I've already filed a police report." That night I got a text from Becky. "Who have you been talking to at the bank?" Jeremy said. "Someone was asking questions." The next day I went to the county clerk's office and filed paperwork contesting the refinance due to fraud. I also registered a formal notice that no changes to the property could be made without my presence. 2 days later, Becky called. "Let it go to voicemail, Nathan. We need to talk." The bank called about the house. "What are you doing?" "This is about the divorce. We can discuss it like adults." It's like adults. The same words from her email. I still didn't respond. James called that afternoon. "They froze the refinance money, and there's more. Your wife's boyfriend has been driving your truck, right? The one in your name?" "Yeah. Got pulled over this morning driving on a suspended license from those DUIs. They impounded the vehicle." "Good," I said. He also had some interesting things in the truck. Prescription pads from the dental office where Becky works. They weren't blank. I closed my eyes. She's been stealing prescription pads. Looks that way. The police are investigating. I hung up and sat on the edge of the motel bed. This was getting bigger than I had expected. Part of me wanted to call Becky and warn her. Old habits dying hard. But then I remembered the security camera footage. My house, my dog, my life, given away as if it meant nothing. No, this was the path now. I couldn't turn back. And honestly, I didn't want to. The next morning, I met with the bank's fraud investigator, a short guy named Thompson with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. "This happens more often than you'd think," he said, spreading documents across his desk. "Spouse deploys, other spouse sees an opportunity." "What happens now?" I asked. "We've frozen the funds from the fraudulent refinance, but there's a problem. Some of the money's already gone." "How much?" "About half, $14,600. I leaned forward. "Where did it go?" Thompson hesitated. "I'm not supposed to share that information. It's my house. My name was forged, and my money was stolen." He nodded slowly, then turned his computer screen toward me. "These are the transfers out of the refinance account." I scanned the list. Multiple transfers to someone named Daniel Spencer, not Jeremy. Someone else I'd never heard of. God, who's Daniel Spencer? I asked. Thompson shrugged. "Not my department, but you should ask your lawyer to subpoena these records." I called James as soon as I left the bank. "Daniel Spencer," he repeated. "Let me run a check." An hour later, he called. "Back. Got it." Daniel Spencer is a real estate agent, specializes in quick sales, cash deals. She was planning to sell our house. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Looks that way. The deposits were probably earnest money to get him moving on a listing. But here's where it gets interesting. Spencer has done business with Jeremy Ryan before. Jeremy Ryan's that your wife's boyfriend? Yes. They've closed 3 deals together in the past 2 years. I sat down on a park bench trying to process this. So this wasn't just Becky leaving me for some guy. This WA's a planned operation, maybe James said carefully. I did some digging into Jeremy Ryan. He has a pattern. Gets involved with women going through divorce or with deployed spouses. 3 cases I've found so far. Each time the woman's home gets sold well below market value to one of Spencer's clients. Ryan gets a cut, then he moves on. And Becky, she knew about this? Hard to say. Maybe she's a victim too, or maybe she's in on it. I rubbed my face. This wasn't just about Becky betraying me anymore. This was something bigger, something calculated, and other military families had been victims. We do? I asked. I've already contacted the FBI's Financial Crime Division, James said. This crosses state lines, involves military personnel, and VA loans. They're interested. That night, I sat in my motel room with a beer, thinking about everything. Wondering if Becky had been playing me our entire marriage, or if she'd gotten swept up in Jeremy's scheme, and wondering if it even mattered. My phone buzzed. Becky again. Nathan, please call me. The bank is saying something about fraud, and Jeremy got arrested for driving your truck. I don't understand what's happening. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Who? Is Daniel Spencer?" The 3 dots appeared as she started typing, then stopped, started again, and stopped. Finally, "I don't know what you're talking about." 14,600, I wrote. Multiple transfers. House listing. There's no response for 10 minutes. Then, it's not what you think. I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, James called. FBI wants to meet. They've been investigating Ryan and Spencer for months. You're not the first, but you might be the case that breaks it open. For the first time since getting that divorce email, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because my marriage was over, but because the truth was finally coming out. I met with the FBI agents at their field office in Spokane, Agent Patel and Agent Donovan. They recorded my statement and took copies of all the documents James and I had gathered. Your case helps establish a pattern, Agent Patel explained. Shows intent, organization. This makes it a conspiracy rather than isolated incidents. What about Becky? I asked. My wife's wife. The agents exchanged looks. We're still determining her level of involvement, Donovan said carefully. Did she ever mention financial difficulties? Pressure to sell the house? I thought back. She kept saying we were house poor, that we should downsize. I didn't see the need. Our mortgage payments were manageable on my salary. Patel made a note. When did that start? About 6 months ago. Around the time she must have met Jeremy. And the refinance? Donovan asked. Never discussed it with me. She forged my signature while I was deployed. They asked more questions and took more notes. When we finished, Patel handed me her card. We'll be in touch. In the meantime, don't confront your wife or Ryan. We need to build this case carefully. I nodded. Understood. That evening, I drove to our neighborhood again and parked down the street from our house. Jeremy's truck was back. He must have gotten it out of impound. Becky's car was gone. My phone buzzed. A text from Becky. We need to talk in person. Meet me at Riverfront Park tomorrow. I showed the text to James over breakfast the next day. Don't go, he advised. Nothing good can come from talking to her right now. I won't, I said. I want to know what she's doing today while she thinks I'm meeting her. We drove to our house at 9:30 a.m. and parked across the street. At 9:45, Becky came out, got in her car, and drove away, heading toward Riverfront Park. Now what? James asked. Now we wait, I said. 20 minutes later, a car pulled up. With a real estate agent logo on the door, Daniel Spencer. Jeremy came out to greet him. They talked in the driveway, then went inside. Should we follow them? James asked. I shook my head. No need. I installed security cameras last year, interior. And exterior? They upload to cloud storage. James smiled. You didn't mention that before? Never came up, I said, pulling out my phone. I opened the security app and angled the screen so James could see. Spencer and Jeremy were in our living room. Spencer was taking photos and Jeremy was pointing out features of the house. I turned up the volume. Should list by the end of the week, Spencer was saying. I've got a buyer interested, already cash offer as usual. How much? Jeremy asked. 420. We list at 470. They offer 420. Everybody's happy. What about the husband? Becky says he's causing trouble. Spencer waved dismissively. Military guys are all the same. They make noise, but they've got deployments, responsibilities. They'll take a settlement to make it go away. Turn to, James, you getting this? He was already recording the feed on his phone, every word. I forwarded the security feed access to Agent Patel with a short message, happening now. 30 minutes later, our house was surrounded by FBI vehicles. I watched from down the street as agents led Spencer and Jeremy out in handcuffs. My phone rang. It was Agent Patel. Got them on tape discussing the fraud scheme, she said, plus conspiracy, wire fraud. and attempting to sell property under false pretenses. We're going to need a formal statement from you. Of course, I said. And Mr. Briggs' wife just arrived at the scene. She's distressed. I looked down the street. Becky was standing on our lawn, hands over her mouth, watching as FBI agents carried boxes of documents from our house. What happens to her? I asked. That depends, Patel said, on what she knew and on what you want. I watched Becky for a long moment, thinking about 13 years of marriage. It's the good years at the beginning, before whatever this had become. I just want what's right, I said finally. The federal case moved quickly. Jeremy and Spencer both took plea deals, implicating each other and several other conspirators in what turned out to be a 3-state operation, targeting military families. Becky maintained she knew nothing about the larger scheme, saying Jeremy had convinced her I was hiding money and planning to leave her with nothing. She said the refinance was his idea and that she had just gone along with it. Maybe that was true, and maybe it wasn't. Either way, she agreed to a settlement. Full restitution of the stolen funds, forfeiture of any claim to the house or my military pension, and a signed confession about the forgery. In exchange, I didn't press charges. The divorce was finalized. 6 months after that email from Kandahar. It was a no-fault clean break, all things considered. On the day the last paperwork was signed, I got a call from Agent Patel. Jeremy Ryan was sentenced today years for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. Spencer got 12. Thought you'd want to know. Thank you, I said. There's something else, she added. Found evidence they've done this to 11 other military families. Your case helped us build the pattern. These families might get their money back because of you. After we hung up, I sat on the porch of my rental apartment, watching the sunset and thinking about those other families, other men who had deployed, thinking their homes and marriages were safe, only to come back to nothing. I hadn't planned on being the one to bring down Jeremy and Spencer's operation. I just wanted what was mine. But sometimes things work out in ways you don't expect. My phone buzzed. A text from Becky. I never meant for things to end this way. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. A year later, I sold the house. I couldn't stand to live in it anymore. There were too many memories and too much betrayal in those walls. I used the money to buy a small cabin outside of Missoula, Montana. 2 bedrooms, 10 acres of land, a creek running behind it, and no neighbors for miles. I took early retirement from the Army. 20 years was enough, and I had given enough. I got a dog, a German Shepherd named Scout, and started doing carpentry work for locals. It wasn't anything fancy, but it kept my hands busy and paid the bills. My military pension covered the rest. Sometimes I thought about Becky and wondered where she ended up. James heard she'd moved back to her hometown in Oregon, working at another dental office, starting over, I guess. I didn't hate her anymore. To be honest, I didn't feel much of anything about her. She had made her choices, and so had I. Evening, I got a letter from a woman in Fort Worth. Her husband was in the Navy, deployed when Jeremy and Spencer tried to run their scheme on her. The FBI had given her my name as part of the case. You don't know me, she wrote, but you saved our home. Thank you for fighting back when it would have been easier to just walk away. I read it twice, then pinned it to my refrigerator. Some days, when the silence was too loud or the memories too sharp, I'd look at that letter and remember that something good had come from all of it. Last I heard, Jeremy was still in prison, and so was Spencer. The system had worked for once. As for me, I was finding my way forward, one quiet day at a time, building something new. Something that couldn't be stolen, forged, or betrayed. Something that was just mine for once.